Welcome back. So now that we have our ACC player character class, it's time to create the character blueprint. I'm going to go ahead and launch Unreal Engine directly from the IDE. Now from here in the engine, I can start to create my folder structure here in Crash Course, and the next folder I'm going to make next to Maps is for all characters in this project. So it's going to be called Characters, and it's here that I'm going to create my character blueprint. So I'm going to create a new blueprint class, choosing all classes, and I'm going to search for CC underscore player character and choose that and select. I'm going to call this BPCC player character. So I'll keep the CC prefix on my blueprints where applicable. And that's just a convention, you don't have to follow it. Now I'm going to open that up and select the mesh, and I want to choose a mesh from my Paragon Boris asset pack. Now, if I open it in the content drawer and go to Characters, Heroes, open Boris, here in Meshes, we have a Boris mesh. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to come back and find Skeletal Mesh asset and hit that left arrow, and here is Boris. So, of course, I'm going to want to rotate it by 90 degrees and lower it. I typically like to look at my capsule component. I see that its half height is 96. So that tells me I could take my mesh and set its location to -96 to set it on the ground. Now it needs an animation blueprint. And if I go back to the folder where I have Boris and go out one level, there's a Boris anim blueprint just built into this pack. I'm going to select it and choose that for my anim class on this mesh. And now my Boris is animated in an idle animation here. I can go ahead and save that, and I need to create a game mode so that I can set my default pawn to the player character. So right next to my characters folder in Crash Course, I'm going to make a new folder called Game, where I'm going to keep my game mode. Now, we don't really need a C++ class to back this game mode. You can create one if you like, but I'm just going to create a blueprint for it by creating a new blueprint, selecting game mode base, and I'm going to call this BP Crash Game Mode. No CC in the name because it's not based on a custom C++ class that I created. It's just based on game mode base. I'm going to open it up and choose my default pawn class, selecting BPCC player character. I'm going to go ahead and compile and save that and close it. And now I can go back to project settings, to maps and modes, to choose my default game mode, BP Crash Game Mode. Now that that's set, I should be able to press play. And because we have the Boris Paragon asset pack, any compilation errors that exist in any blueprints are going to manifest here when we're trying to play. And it shows that there's a blueprint called Boris Player Character. Now, if I click on that link, it's going to show me the compilation errors that exist. And this is in Boris Player Character, which exists right here in the Paragon asset pack. Now, we're not going to be using this Boris Player Character at all. So we could simply delete the entire blueprint. Alternatively, if you don't want to delete the blueprint itself, you could simply highlight all the nodes in the event graph and delete those, as those are the source of compilation errors. So if I go ahead and clear out the event graph and close it out, that takes care of all compilation errors, and I can press play, and then we'll be prompted to fix the next compilation error, which exists in Boris anim blueprint. So we need to click on that and see where that error exists. And if I click on compile and go back to my event graph for this animation blueprint, I can see where any errors exist. And it looks like they're down here on these two nodes. Now, these two nodes apparently don't exist, which is something that can happen when you're calling a function that has been later deleted. For instance, we can simply take this entire section down here, which is a pair of anim notifies. We can delete those and hit compile, and that's going to resolve compilation errors there. So now I should be able to press play, and sure enough, I'm able to. Now, we have not yet set up any inputs, so if I click in the viewport to engage and I try to move around, nothing's going to happen, but at least we can see that we're possessing the correct pawn. We can see that over here in the outliner with BPCC player character, and we're using our BP Crash game mode. So things are set up correctly here. We just need to program some movement by setting up our inputs. Now, if we look in the output log, we can check to see if we got any warnings. There will be errors above, but of course we fix those by deleting some of the erroneous nodes in the various blueprints. But there's a couple of yellow warnings here. One of them says divide by 0, and it's referencing Boris Anim blueprint in the next warning down. And then we have particle system is null for particle notify, play particle effect in the level start montage. So it looks like these are stemming from Boris Anim blueprint. And if we want to find that divide by 0 error, then we need to look for a division node that's dividing two floats. And there's one down here in this comment that says setting yaw delta for leans, where we're dividing the yaw from this brake rotator node from what looks like a wire coming from delta time X from the blueprint update animation node. So we're seeing a division of two floats here. And if we ever suspect that this might result in dividing by 0, we can replace this division node by a safe divide node. Safe divide will check to see if the divisor, this B value, is 0, because dividing by 0 is undefined. If this does evaluate B to be 0, then it'll simply return 0 as the result. So we can replace this division by a safe divide instead. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the two wires going into this divide and drag them in to the A and B of a safe divide. I'm simply holding Control and clicking to bring those wires down to safe divide. And then I can delete that divide node, and now we're using safe divide instead. Now I can compile that, and I can open my output log. I'm going to dock it in the layout here, and I'm going to right click and clear the log so we're not confused by any previous errors or warnings. And I'm going to press play, and I'm going to see if there are any warnings here. And we've gotten rid of the divide by 0, but we still have this warning referencing the level start montage here. So we can just kind of debug that last warning for the level start montage. And I see all the way at the top in Event Blueprint Begin Play, we're playing this level start montage. We can browse to it and open up that montage, and we see a play particle effect here. If we select that, there's a particle system on this anim notify that doesn't have a value set to it. Now, if you want to, you can search for a particle system to play. I have no idea what particle system was supposed to play here, so I'm simply going to select that notify and hit delete and remove it so that we no longer have a notify that's trying to play a particle system that is not set. So I can go ahead and close that montage. I can clear the log and press play, and I have now gotten rid of all warnings that were just inherent in that Paragon Boris asset pack. So now we won't be distracted by warnings because we want to keep an eye out for any warnings in our own code, right? So now we don't have any warnings that we can't fix as we've gone and fixed them. So now we have our BP CC player character with its own mesh asset set, and it even has an animation blueprint that should take care of animating our character once we start applying movement and making our character run around. Our next steps are to set up enhanced input so that we can move our character around. So we'll start that in the next video. Great job, and I'll see you soon.